Pause for a moment, not because something dramatic is about to happen, but because something already has. The moment you started listening to this, something subtle shifted. Not loud, not obvious, but unmistakable. That quiet recognition you felt, that strange sense of familiarity, that inner voice whispering, "This feels personal." That's not coincidence. That's awareness waking up. And awareness never arrives with chaos. It doesn't crash into your life. It doesn't beg for attention. It arrives calmly, like clarity settling in. Most people live on autopilot, reacting, repeating, responding to noise instead of direction. But every once in a while, something interrupts that cycle. A moment of stillness, a realization, a pause that feels heavier than movement. That's where you are now. You may not have noticed when it began, but you're no longer operating from the same place you once were. You don't feel the same urgency to prove yourself. You don't feel the same need to explain your choices. You don't feel drawn to the same distractions. Something internal has recalibrated, and when that happens, the external world starts responding differently. Here's what most people don't realize. Awareness doesn't change your life overnight. It changes how you move through it. You stop reacting automatically. You stop chasing validation. You stop forcing alignment where it doesn't exist. Instead, you begin observing. You notice patterns you once ignored. You see behaviors clearly, including your own. You recognize when energy feels right and when it doesn't. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. There comes a point in certain people's lives where they stop trying to convince the world who they are. Not because they've given up, but because they've figured it out. They no longer announce themselves. They no longer perform identity. They no longer argue with misunderstanding. They simply move differently. And that difference is felt. Not everyone will be able to explain it. Not everyone will be comfortable with it, but it will be noticed. Because when someone stops seeking approval, their presence shifts, their energy stabilizes, their decisions become cleaner, their reactions slow down, and suddenly situations that once demanded emotional effort don't anymore. You've probably felt this. Things that used to irritate you no longer pull the same reaction. People who once had access to your emotions now feel distant. Arguments that once consumed your energy now feel pointless. That's not numbness. That's regulation. That's the nervous system learning that it doesn't need to be on constant alert. That's maturity settling in. And maturity often looks quiet from the outside, but inside it's powerful. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you stop reacting, some people don't know how to interact with you anymore. Because many systems, social, emotional, psychological, are built on reaction. They rely on your response. They feed on your engagement. They function through emotional hooks. And when those hooks stop working, tension appears. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've stopped playing a role you never consciously agreed to. You're no longer available for chaos. You're no longer participating in emotional loops. You're no longer giving energy to what drains you. And that disrupts familiar patterns. You may notice people questioning you. You've changed. You're distant. You don't talk like you used to. What they really mean is, you're no longer predictable. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer feeding the dynamic. And unpredictability unsettles those who rely on control. But here's what matters. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You didn't detach from life. You detached from noise. You didn't lose empathy. You learned boundaries. Awareness does that. It teaches you the difference between involvement and responsibility. You realize that not every emotion is yours to carry. Not every conflict is yours to resolve. Not every opinion deserves your response. And once that realization lands, your entire rhythm changes. You start moving slower but more precisely. You speak less but with intention. You act from alignment, not impulse. That's when real power begins to form. Not loud power, not dominating power, but grounded power. The kind that doesn't rush, the kind that doesn't argue, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. It just is, and like gravity, it influences everything around it without force. This is why your presence may feel heavier lately. Not intense, just solid. People feel it when you walk into a room. Conversations shift when you speak. Silence becomes comfortable around you. Not because you're trying to lead, but because awareness naturally stabilizes environments. You're no longer trying to be seen, you're simply being, and that's where the real transformation begins. There is a moment in personal growth that almost no one prepares you for. It's the moment when you realize that reacting less doesn't make you weaker. It makes you dangerous to chaos. Most people grow up believing that strength looks like expression, loud opinions, immediate responses, emotional visibility. But real mastery begins when you understand something deeper. Not everything deserves your nervous system. You don't owe your emotions to every trigger. You don't owe explanations to every provocation. You don't owe energy to every situation that demands it. And once you learn that, your internal world reorganizes. You stop rushing to respond. You stop defending your position emotionally. You stop getting pulled into narratives that don't serve your direction. Instead, you pause. And that pause changes everything, because between stimulus and responsa, there is power. Most people never access it, they react automatically. Their emotions decide their actions. Their environment controls their behavior. But you've stepped out of that loop. You've learned that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about choice. You choose when to engage. You choose when to stay silent. You choose when to move forward, and when to let things collapse on their own. That's not suppression, that's regulation. There's a massive difference. Suppression traps emotion in the body. Regulation allows emotion to pass through without hijacking you. And regulated people are difficult to manipulate. Because manipulation depends on urgency. It depends on emotional hooks. It depends on provoking reactions before clarity arrives. But clarity has already arrived for you. You've seen what happens when emotions lead. You've lived through the consequences of impulsive reactions. You've experienced what chaos costs. So now you move differently. You've probably noticed it. Things that once demanded an immediate response now get silence. Situations that once triggered anger now get observation. People who once controlled your emotional state no longer have access. That shift confuses people. Because when someone stops reacting, others lose leverage. They can't predict you. They can't pull you into old patterns. They can't extract emotional labor from you. And when control disappears, testing begins. They provoke, they poke, they escalate. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because they're trying to re-establish access. And you don't give it. You've learned that staying calm is not passive. It's strategic. When you remain centered, you see clearly. When you see clearly, you act precisely. When you act precisely, you waste no energy. This is where true confidence forms. Not the loud kind, not the performative kind, but the grounded kind. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that doesn't argue with misunderstanding. The kind that lets reality speak for itself. Here's something important. Most people mistake emotional expression for authenticity. They believe that if they feel something, it must be acted on. That if they think something, it must be said. But mastery teaches restraint, not silence from fear, silence from clarity. You've learned that some thoughts don't need airtime. Some emotions don't need amplification. Some battles don't deserve your nervous system. And because of that, your inner world is stabilized. You may still feel deeply, but you're no longer ruled by what you feel. You observe it, you process it, you integrate it, and then you choose. That choice is what separates mastery from chaos. Most people are reactive not because they want to be, but because they've never learned regulation. They've never learned to sit with discomfort. They've never learned to delay expression. They've never learned that calm can be more powerful than confrontation you have. And because of that, life feels different now. You don't feel rushed internally. You don't feel pulled in every direction. You don't feel the need to respond to everything. You're selective, and selectivity is strength. Here's the paradox. When you stop reacting, situations resolve faster, arguments lose momentum, drama collapses without fuel, manipulation exposes itself, not because you fought but because you didn't. Chaos cannot survive without participation. It needs energy, it needs attention, it needs emotional engagement. When those disappear, it collapses under its own weight. That's why you've noticed things rearranging lately. People revealing their intentions without you confronting them. Conflicts resolving themselves. Obstacles dissolving instead of escalating. That's not avoidance, that's mastery. You're no longer fighting symptoms, you're removing supply. And that shifts the entire dynamic. There's another layer to this. Non-reaction doesn't mean inaction. It means timed action. You move when it matters. You speak when it's effective. You engage when it aligns. You don't act from emotion. You act from intention. And intention carries weight. People can feel it. They may not understand why you unsettle them. They may not know why your silence feels heavy. But they sense it. Because calm authority doesn't announce itself, it's felt. And that makes some people uncomfortable. Especially those who rely on emotional chaos to feel relevant. Your steadiness mirrors their instability. Your discipline highlights their avoidance. Your patience exposes their impulsiveness. Not because you judge them, but because contrast reveals truth. And truth is uncomfortable to those not ready to face it. But you're not here to manage their discomfort. You're here to manage your direction. This is where discipline deepens. You wake up with focus even when motivation is low. You keep moving even when no one is watching. You maintain standards even when shortcuts are available. That's not willpower. That's identity. Your actions now come from who you are, not who you're trying to become. And that alignment simplifies everything. Decisions become easier, distractions lose their appeal, noise fades into background. You know what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And when someone tries to pull you into reaction, you recognize it instantly. You don't need to explain why you're disengaging. You don't need to justify your calm. You don't need to defend your boundaries. You simply don't move. And stillness, when chosen consciously, because it tells the world, I am not controlled by urgency. I am not driven by chaos. I am not available for manipulation. That message doesn't need words. It's felt. This is self-mastery, not perfection, not emotional numbness, but command. Command over attention, command over response, command over direction. And once you have that, life responds differently. Opportunities align faster. People respect you more even if they don't like you. situations become cleaner, because mastery attracts clarity, and clarity attracts momentum. You're no longer chasing outcomes, you're positioned for them. At a certain stage of awareness, you stop asking yourself how to be liked and start asking how to stay aligned. This is where boundaries become non-negotiable. Not because you're hardened, not because you've become cold, but because you finally understood the cost of unfiltered access. Energy is not infinite, attention is not cheap, presence is not owed. Most people never learn this. They confuse availability with kindness. They mistake overgiving for virtue. They believe saying yes proves worth. And slowly, they burn themselves out trying to be everything to everyone. You didn't. You learned often the hard way that access without boundaries leads to depletion. So you changed. You no longer explain your limits repeatedly. You no longer negotiate your peace. You no longer overextend to prove your value. You choose containment. And containment is not restriction, it's protection. There's a subtle shift that happens when boundaries mature. You stop announcing them. Early boundaries are loud because they're defensive. Mature boundaries are quiet because they're embodied. You don't need to say, "Don't cross this line." Your presence already communicates it. People feel it. They may not know why they hesitate before overstepping. They may not understand why conversations with you feel contained, but they sense the structure. Because structure carries authority, and authority doesn't need volume. You've probably noticed something interesting. People either respect your boundaries or slowly remove themselves, and you let them. Because chasing people who can't respect your limits only teaches them that your boundaries are negotiable, and you don't negotiate alignment. This is where disengagement becomes a skill. You've learned to leave before situations distort your frequency. You exit conversations that drain instead of nourish. You step away from dynamics that require you to shrink or perform, not angrily, quietly. Because silence is a complete sentence. Most people underestimate disengagement. They think walking away means losing. They think staying means strength. But mastery flips that narrative. Staying in misaligned environments is not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. And you no longer abandon yourself. You've recognized a hard truth. Not everyone deserves proximity to your inner world. Some people only want access to extract reassurance. Some want validation without growth. Some want emotional labor without accountability. You don't provide that anymore, and that shift changes the way people relate to you. They can't lean on you irresponsibly. They can't unload chaos without consequence. They can't feed on your empathy without reciprocity. That doesn't make you unkind. It makes you regulated. Here's something powerful. Boundaries don't push the right people away, they filter out the wrong ones. Aligned people respect clarity. Misaligned people resist it. So when someone reacts negatively to your boundaries, they're revealing their expectations, not your flaws. You've learned not to take that personally. Because your responsibility is not to be convenient, it's to be congruent. And congruence creates quiet authority. Quiet authority doesn't demand attention, it doesn't argue for respect, it doesn't perform confidence. It simply exists, and people respond to it instinctively. They speak more carefully around you. They hesitate before crossing lines. They feel the weight of your presence. Not because you're intimidating, but because you're self-contained. Self-contained people are grounded. They don't leak energy through over-explaining. They don't seek validation through emotional disclosure. They don't chase closeness that requires self-betrayal. They attract relationships that are stable or none at all. And you've made peace with that. You'd rather have fewer connections with depth than many connections with chaos. This is where energy protection becomes intuitive. You no longer need techniques. You no longer need rituals. You no longer need constant self-help reinforcement. Your nervous system already knows what's unsafe. Your body responds faster than your mind. You feel the drain before the damage. You sense misalignment before conflict. You exit before resentment forms. That's emotional intelligence matured into wisdom. And wisdom is efficient. You've also noticed something else. When you stop overgiving, life compensates. You receive support from unexpected places. Opportunities align without force. Momentum replaces exhaustion. Because energy conserved is energy redirected. You're no longer pouring yourself into bottomless situations. You're investing in what grows you, and that changes your posture in the world. You speak differently. You decide differently. Not aggressively, not defensively, deliberately. This deliberateness is what unsettles people, because it removes ambiguity. They can't test your limits easily. They can't guilt you into access. They can't manipulate through urgency. And when manipulation fails, some people reveal themselves. They accuse you of being distant, cold, changed. You don't argue. Because growth always looks like distance to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries, and you don't shrink to make others comfortable anymore. That's where authority solidifies. Not authority over others, authority over yourself. You don't chase approval. You don't fear disapproval. You don't bend under pressure. You choose alignment even when it costs closeness. And here's the paradox. That choice eventually attracts deeper connection. Because healthy people feel safe around boundaries, they trust clarity, they respect structure, they value consistency, and they recognize it in you. So while some people fall away, others find you, not loudly, not dramatically, organically, because alignment is magnetic. You're no longer available for chaos, and chaos knows it. That's why things feel quieter now. Less dramatic, less emotionally charged, less draining. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped feeding what drained you. You've stepped into a role many people never reach. The calm center. The one who doesn't need to dominate a room to hold it. The one who doesn't need to speak constantly to be heard. The one whose presence alone creates containment. That's leadership without performance. And it begins with boundaries. Boundaries that aren't reactive but rooted. Boundaries that don't isolate but protect. Boundaries that don't punish but clarify. You didn't build walls, you built gates, and you decide who enters. At some point, clarity stops feeling like a breakthrough and starts feeling like a responsibility. You don't wake up asking what to do with your life anymore. You wake up knowing what not to do, and that changes everything. Purpose doesn't always arrive as passion. Sometimes it arrives as refusal. Refusal to waste energy. Refusal to chase validation. Refusal to participate in systems that drain more than they give. You've crossed that threshold. You're no longer experimenting with your identity. You're executing from it. This is where alignment becomes visible. Alignment isn't excitement. It isn't constant motivation. It isn't dramatic certainty. Alignment is consistency without force. You show up even when no one is watching. You make decisions that feel quiet but correct. You choose direction over distraction. And slowly, momentum begins to form. Momentum doesn't feel explosive at first. It feels subtle. Less friction, fewer internal arguments, quicker decisions. You stop second-guessing what you already know. That's because alignment removes internal conflict. When your values and actions match, energy stops leaking. You're no longer torn between who you are and who you think you should be. That reconciliation frees capacity, and capacity creates acceleration. Here's something important. Momentum isn't created by speed, it's created by coherence. Most people move fast in opposing directions. They start, stop, restart, rebrand, retreat. They exhaust themselves chasing clarity. You're doing the opposite. You're building from a centered core. You don't rush, you don't overcommit, you don't scatter your attention. You apply pressure in one direction. And pressure, when sustained, produces results. This is why things begin aligning around you. Not because the world suddenly favors you, but because you've removed internal resistance. Life responds efficiently to clarity. Opportunities that match your values find you. Distractions lose their pull. Decisions become cleaner. You stop forcing outcomes and start positioning for them. That's the difference between effort and alignment. Effort pushes, alignment attracts, and attraction accelerates momentum. You may have noticed that timelines are compressing. Things that used to take years are happening faster. Not magically, logically. You're not repeating the same lessons. You're not circling the same patterns. You're integrating experiences into wisdom. Integration is the accelerator. Most people experience life. Few people integrate it. Integration means you don't relive old wounds. You extract lessons and move forward. You don't rehearse past mistakes. You apply corrections immediately. You don't romanticize struggle. You refine systems. This makes your growth efficient. Efficiency compounds. That's why your progress feels different now. It's quieter but deeper. You're not chasing recognition, you're building substance. And substance holds weight. Here's where purpose clarifies further. Purpose isn't always about what you do, it's about how you move through environments. You stabilize systems by being present. You bring order without controlling. You influence without force. People feel clearer after interacting with you. Not because you tell them what to do, but because your alignment reflects possibility. You model coherence, and coherence is contagious. This is why some people feel uncomfortable around you. Not because you're judging them, but because your consistency mirrors their avoidance. You don't need to say anything. Your discipline speaks. Your boundaries speak. Your direction speaks. That's purpose expressed through behavior. Not through titles, not through declarations, through lived example. This is also where momentum becomes self-sustaining. You no longer rely on bursts of motivation, you operate from systems. Routines that protect your energy, practices that maintain clarity, structures that support focus. These systems remove reliance on mood. And when mood is removed, progress accelerates. You move forward on good days and bad days. That's power. You're no longer waiting to feel ready. You're ready because you're aligned, and alignment is durable. Here's a truth many miss. Momentum is fragile when it's built on emotion. Momentum is resilient when it's built on identity. You've shifted from trying to be disciplined to being someone who moves with discipline. From seeking purpose to acting from it. From hoping for change to becoming the environment where change occurs. That's a fundamental shift, and once it happens, life responds accordingly. You stop needing external pressure. You stop needing reminders. You stop needing permission. You direct yourself, and self-directed individuals are rare. That rarity creates gravity. People start paying attention. Opportunities start orbiting. Influence increases. Not because you chased it, but because alignment generates trust. Trust opens doors faster than ambition ever could. And you're learning to move through those doors carefully. You don't rush expansion. You scale responsibly. You assess what deserves growth and what needs release. Because momentum without discernment leads to burnout, you've already outgrown that phase. Now expansion feels controlled, intentional. You grow without losing yourself. That's the mark of integrated purpose. Your identity isn't tied to outcomes. Your worth isn't tied to productivity. Your value isn't tied to applause. That freedom allows you to move boldly, because failure doesn't threaten your self-concept. And when fear loses leverage, action becomes cleaner. You act without overthinking. You adjust without self-judgment. You persist without desperation. That's sustainable acceleration. Here's what this stage really looks like. You wake up with direction. You move through the day with focus. You end the day without self-betrayal. Not perfect days, aligned ones, and aligned days compound, quietly. Until one day you realize it. You're no longer chasing the life you want. You're living inside it, not as fantasy, not as escape, as structure, as rhythm, as reality. Purpose, alignment, and momentum don't arrive separately, they converge. And when they do, life stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like cooperation. You're not pushing the current anymore. You're moving with it. And that's when acceleration becomes inevitable. There comes a stage in growth where nothing feels urgent anymore, but everything feels intentional. You're no longer trying to become someone. You're learning how to remain who you already are. That's integration. Integration is when past versions of you stop arguing with the present one, when lessons no longer feel like wins, when experiences stop demanding explanation. They simply exist, absorbed, understood, complete. You're not fragmented anymore. You don't compartmentalize your strength and softness, your discipline and empathy, your boundaries and compassion. They coexist. That coexistence creates stability. And stability is the foundation of quiet leadership. Quiet leadership doesn't announce itself. It doesn't correct everyone in the room. It doesn't need to be right publicly. It leads through presence. People sense it before they understand it. Your calm regulates environments. Your groundedness reduces chaos. Your clarity simplifies complexity. Not because you're trying to guide anyone, but because coherence influences systems naturally. This is the paradox. The more integrated you become, the less you feel the need to lead. And yet, leadership follows you. People ask for your perspective. They mirror your pace. They trust your decisions. Not because you dominate, but because you're consistent. Consistency builds credibility. Credibility builds influence. And influence, when handled responsibly, shapes legacy. But legacy doesn't start at the end of life. It's built in daily interactions. In how you handle pressure. In how you treat those who can't benefit you. In how you respond when no one is watching. That's where legacy lives. Most people think legacy is about visibility. It's not. It's about impact per interaction. A calm response instead of escalation. A boundary instead of resentment. A clear decision instead of avoidance. These moments accumulate. They shape families. They stabilize teams. They shift cultures, quietly. This is why your presence feels heavier now. Not burdened, weighted. Weighted with experience, with discernment, with restraint. You don't speak impulsively. You don't react reflexively. You don't chase validation. You move deliberately. That deliberateness creates safety. People feel safer around those who are integrated. Because unpredictability disappears. They know where you stand. They know what you tolerate. They know what you won't compromise. Clarity is comforting, and comfort breeds trust. Here's something most never realize. Trust outlives performance. Skills fade, titles change, recognition shifts. But the way you made people feel steady, respected, understood remains. That's legacy in motion. You're not building monuments. You're building memory. And memory influences behavior long after presence ends. This is why you don't rush visibility. You don't chase platforms prematurely. You don't expand faster than your integrity, because you understand something rare. Influence without integration becomes distortion. You've seen it. People with power but no grounding. Voices with reach but no responsibility. Leaders who collapse under their own projection. You chose a different path. You stabilized yourself first. You faced discomfort privately so you wouldn't create chaos publicly. That decision will echo longer than you realize. This is where leadership becomes stewardship. You don't see people as followers. You see them as environments. You ask, does my presence improve this space? And if the answer is no, you recalibrate. That self-accountability keeps your influence clean. You don't extract from systems, you contribute to them. And contribution compounds. This is why life entrusts you with more. Not because you demand it, but because you're reliable. Reliability is rare, and rare things carry value. You've also learned when not to lead, when to step back, when to let others struggle, when to allow growth through friction. That restraint protects both you and them. You don't rescue anymore. You don't overextend. You don't confuse responsibility with control. That's integration expressed through wisdom. And wisdom is the most sustainable form of authority. Your legacy won't be loud, it won't trend, it won't shout, it will persist. In the way people handle pressure differently, after watching how you handle yours. In the way boundaries feel permissible, because you modeled them without guilt. In the way integrity becomes an option, because you proved it's livable. That's how culture shifts. Not through speeches, through embodiment. You embody balance. strength without aggression, compassion without self-erasure, discipline without rigidity. That balance makes you adaptable. And adaptability is essential for longevity. Here's the final truth of this stage. You don't need to be remembered by everyone. You need to be felt by the right ones. The ones who carry your influence forward. The ones who model what they learned from you. The ones who pass clarity down quietly. That's generational impact. And it starts with how you live today. So if your life feels simpler now, less dramatic, more directed, that's not a loss of excitement, that's maturity. If your circle is smaller but stronger, that's not isolation. That's alignment. If your pace is slower but more effective, that's not stagnation, that's precision. You've integrated who you were with who you're becoming. You no longer split yourself to survive, you stand whole, and wholeness is powerful. This is what quiet leadership looks like. No slogans, no performance, no noise, just presence, consistency, integrity. And that is the kind of legacy that doesn't fade when attention moves on, it deepens. If this final section felt like confirmation rather than discovery, it's because you're already living it. Not perfectly, intentionally. And intention sustained over time becomes destiny. Stay aligned, stay integrated, and let your life speak for you.